can do work on my table. If it was a full water bottle, it happens to be empty because I just finished drinking it. But if it was full or full of lead, I could have a nail on my table and drop it, and it would pound the nail in. In pounding the nail, it does work. So it's when it's up here, it has the potential to do work. It has more potential up here, because if the higher up it is, the more potential the greater it's going to eventually be able to have speed and knock a nail in. So the fact that things lose potential energy as they go down is not surprising. Now, the point is, an object out at infinity, far away from everything else and at rest, it makes sense to say that has zero total energy, mechanical energy. It's at rest, it's not moving, and it's infinitely far away from everything else. So let's say that it has zero total energy. But then if you move it closer to the Earth and it starts falling to the Earth, if its initial energy, potential energy was zero, it's lost energy, and therefore its new potential energy is negative. And so gravity is full of talking about negative energy because we define things at infinity to be zero. And so negative energy is an integral part of gravity. It may sound like hocus pocus, but it actually is relevant.
Yeah, I was going to go in more detail with like some Hamiltonian operators and some other stuff that I would love to one day have a discussion with. But Bill, you have a question. Go for it, man.
I do. I'd like to say I love the beard. Okay, I love the beard.
Well,
thank you. Oh, his. Oh,
yeah, I was just going to say, I've noticed that. I was going to say, it seems to be a requirement of being on the show. Yeah.
Oh, and let the gray come in. Let the gray come in. It gives you an air of wisdom when you finally achieve that. So I see that starting.
My wife wishes it was all gray. But anyway,
don't fight it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not fighting.
I heard you say once that your daughter did a 4th grade project on Pluto as a planet. My daughter Lauren also did a project on Pluto as being a planet. So I just want to say, take that, Neil deGrasse Tyson. We're raising the next generation.
That's right. Every time I'm with Neil, I let him know that. Yeah, I mean, the point is, unfortunately, I mean, it's just a name, a planet. Pluto will always be a planet to me. But the point is, and Richard Feynman once said that his father took him out in the woods when he was younger, and he was looking at the birds, and he said, "What kind of bird is that? What kind of bird is that?" And his father said to him, "The name doesn't matter. The name doesn't give you any information about the bird. What matters is how does the bird fly? What are its habits? How does it eat? How does it reproduce? Those things matter, but the name is irrelevant." And so Pluto is going to be Pluto, regardless of whether it's a planet or not. And in fact, I'm happy to say that there's probably 2 things I wanted to mention about that are coming up in this program. One is, as of today, in fact, as of about 20 minutes ago, the website for the new Origins program, the Origins Project Foundation, just went live. It's a new nonprofit we've created to continue the work of the Origins Project. And the Origins Project Foundation, you go to originsprojectfoundation.org, and as of today, you can go to the website and learn about the program. We're going to be running programs like we did before in big theaters, also travel opportunities for people. But another entity that we've just created, which is called the Origins Project LLC, is running something that we're about to call the Origins Podcast. And it's going to be a video podcast, and it's going to be quite amazing. The set of guests we have will range from everyone from 6 Nobel Prize winners to Woody Allen, in fact. But also, one of the early people we're going to have, and we're going to be taping it in a week or so, is Alan Stern, who was the head of the New Horizons project, which was the satellite that went past Pluto and taught us many new things about Pluto and now beyond. And what Alan, I'm sure, will agree with when we talk next week is that Pluto is more fascinating than it ever was. Whether or not it's a planet, we've learned that it's far more interesting, and that probably is all that matters.
Yeah. What's? Oh, go ahead, Bill.
I was just going to say, my big question for you, because we've used a lot of time already. My big question for you is, in the history of human knowledge, our world has always gotten bigger. Written history started in the Middle East, we guess, a few thousand years ago. They only knew about their local region. a few thousand years later, we discovered that the region was bigger, and then we finally discovered the entire Earth. We looked to the stars and saw that we were part of a solar system, and that was our universe. And then we discovered galaxies. Then we discovered there's billions and billions of galaxies. So, I mean, it appears our universe is finite at this point, right? I mean, it's expanding, but it not finite. Well, I mean, it's expanding, but I mean, is there any reason to believe that the next big step is just going to be, again, much bigger? I mean, we're part of something much bigger. History tells us that that's always been the case.
Well, sure. As our horizons grow, I mean, as I've often said, and some people will have heard me say, every day I'm surprised if I'm not surprised. Because every time we open up in a new window in the universe, we discover new things we never saw before, whether it's increases in space or new things that happen in space. The universe becomes more and more interesting every time we look for new things. Now, it turns out we don't know if our universe is finite or infinite. We can only see a finite amount of it. And we used to think, when I was young, that the older the universe was, the more of it we'd be able to see. Because light travels at a finite speed, and therefore objects from a certain distance, we can only have seen them if the universe is old enough for that light to make it to us. And we figured, well, the older the universe is, the farther away will be the objects we can see. That was conventional wisdom. But as often happens, conventional wisdom isn't right. Because it turns out, as far as we can tell, the expansion of the universe is getting faster and faster. And that means that there are objects that are now moving away from us faster than light that we'll never be able to see. And in fact, the longer we wait, the less of the universe we're going to be able to see, because more and more regions will be moving away from us faster and faster as we wait over time. If that's true, then in some sense, as I often say, we better do cosmology now, because the longer we wait, the less we'll see. But we don't know if that's true. That expansion may end at some point. But that doesn't mean the universe itself, of course, is finite. And there could be, as I've written recently in a professional papers and in some lectures, what's amazing is we may be able to do measurements of gravitational waves from the beginning of time that will tell us that other universes exist. And so our picture will suddenly leap in a much greater sense. Even though we'll never see them, we'll know that our universe isn't all there is, that there are in fact other universes. And that's the kind of leap that I think you might be talking about. So it's perfectly possible in my lifetime, in the lifetime of all the people in this program, that we may know indirectly that other universes exist. And again, I would have thought 20 years ago that would be impossible. And that's just underestimating what observers can do.
My question for you would be, in an age where things, pseudoscience issues like flat Earth, anti-vaxxers, various religions are starting to gain traction and take hold. What's the greatest contribution that the average person can do to sort of get it off that track? Like, what can your average person do to contribute to the spread of actual evidence and facts, and kind of combat this trend that's going on?
Well, of course, that's a wonderful question. I wish I had a silver bullet to answer it. But what I think one of the big things that we can do is try and ask questions. Look, first of all, to some extent, we have to recognize that a certain generation is just beyond help.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that what we want to concentrate on are young people, because they're the future. And there we have to realize that I think we need to teach young people in a way that's too often different than is being taught. We need to teach them by asking questions, not rote memorization or learning a set of facts, as used to be the case in some ways when I grew up. Because, my iPhone has more facts, but it also has more falsehoods than you'll ever get in school. What you need to learn is how to tell the sense from the nonsense, the anti-vax nonsense from the sense. And to do that, you have to start asking questions. and say, well, if this is the case, what does it imply? And then look to see if those predictions are satisfied. So it's a sense of learning how to be skeptical, learning how to constantly ask questions, and then learn how to seek the answers by seeing if your predictions correspond to reality. So I think we have to make learning a process of discovery. Instead of every time a child learns something new, for them it's the first time in the history of the universe that it's ever been understood. It's an amazing discovery. And so instead of worrying about the content so much, because people can get lots of stuff later on from the internet, if we have to teach people how to sift through what's sensible and not sensible in the internet and everywhere else, and that involves asking questions, testing your ideas, and then retesting your ideas. Now, you all know that, but what I think we can do when we talk, if we want to confront, the average person wants to confront people who are spouting nonsense, ask them questions. Use the Socratic method. Say, okay, if this is true, then doesn't this predict this? And then isn't this different than what we see? And so lead people by questioning, as Socrates used to do. It's one good way, I think, of trying to counter this technique, and also encouraging your children to ask questions and be perfectly willing to say, I don't know. Let's find out. Instead of appearing to know, parents like to appear to know the answers to all their children's questions, and teachers do too. But it's much more fun to say, I don't know. Let's figure it out. Let's go on the internet and try and sift through the sense and nonsense and see what the actual answer is.
So what you're saying is there's nothing to this NASA lying to us about the shape of the Earth rhetoric, right?
No, yeah, but look, just saying it's wrong doesn't mean anything. So I've been on lots of radio programs where unfortunately journalists have said to me, "How do we know the Earth isn't flat?" And then you can ask questions. Well, how come my time zone is different than your time zone? Why is that the case? Why does the sun set at a different time for me than you? You can ask a whole bunch of questions, and eventually you're going to have, if you have enough questions, then it's going to become pretty clear that the assumption that the Earth is flat is just nonsense.
Excellent point.
If I can add too, I think the key that Lawrence hit on is we're not going to reach a certain generation. I think the older generation has their minds made up, and reaching children is really the key. And it's teaching them the thought process and the scientific method, and asking questions, but also reaching them and reaching out to them with science. I volunteer. I volunteered almost 300 hours last year at our local museum here, teaching human origins to children that come in on field trips. They may get evolution in school, but they don't get much of human origin, the specifics. And you gear your presentation to the age group that you're dealing with. My presentation to a 7-year-old is going to be different than my presentation to a group of 14-year-olds. Because of their time span, their attention span, and that. But you're right.
And even at different audiences. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, asking questions. And what you're doing is wonderful things. You're doing something wonderful. As my friend Steve Weinberg, who's a Nobel Prize winning physicist and also an atheist, would say, you're doing God's work.
Well, we track, and I reached almost 7,000 children last year. So, to me, that is exactly what we need to be doing.
And everyone can do that. You don't have to be a paleontologist or a scientist. All of us can go into our kids' schools, and try and encourage them to experience the scientific process, because science isn't a thing; it's a process, as you just said. But the one thing I will differ, I don't think all of the older generation is lost. With many of the things I do, I try and provoke people to think. It's just the point is that it's harder, but I think we shouldn't give up on anyone. But what's really important for the future of civilization is that young people get the right experience. It's not that we should forget about everyone else, but you're right, it's harder. But I think all of us, no matter how old we are, I hope, have the experience of at least once in our life finding something that we thought to be true not to be true. And it's a wonderful, liberating experience.